Don't bet silly, bet savvy. Join Coral's Bet and Get Club and get a free £5 bet every Sunday. The smart money's on Coral.
Hello and welcome to the Racing Post Cricket World Cup show. I'm James Milton. I'm joined by my Racing Post colleagues Joe Champion and Liam Flynn, and from Coral by Dave Stevens. And the league stage of the tournament is over. We know the semi-finalists now. Just a quick recap of the action from the weekend, which settled the final league positions. Australia lost to South Africa, and that could be quite a crucial blow to their chances. That means Australia now face England in Thursday's semi-final. And India finished top of the group, which gives them an easier looking assignment against New Zealand. And we're going to be looking ahead to that game in greater depth later in the show. But Dave Stevens, how has India topping the group and getting that as I said, looks like an easier semi-final, how's that affected the outright betting?
It really does look like an easier a tie for them, yeah. I mean, I should just first of all eat some humble pie. I was in here 2 weeks ago and I was feeling very smug. So I've been against England throughout this World Cup. From a betting point of view, I should hasten to add, not a patriotic point of view. 2 weeks ago I was feeling very smug. They'd lost to Australia. They were on the brink. They needed two huge performances and they got them. And how important was Jason Roy coming back? Yeah. Not only for his own batting, but the way, that Johnny Bairstow has just come back into form. So England, two great wins in a row to secure their semi-final spot. The head of the betting, India 13-8. And that's largely because they face, on paper, the easiest semi-final against 8-1 outsiders New Zealand. England 15-8, which, interestingly, is pretty much what they were at the start of the tournament. So, yeah, they've got to the semi-finals. It's what we expected. It's been a roller coaster, but they're there. And then the Australians 11-4, again, not dissimilar to where they were at the start of the tournament. So the blockbuster game, England versus Australia, we all thought it was going to be England versus India, but the South Africans, how crucial might that victory be? Yeah, I mean, England at the early stages of the tournament, these four looked booked for the semi-finals, and then obviously England had their wobble, losing to Sri Lanka and Australia, and ended up having to really dig themselves out of a hole, beating India and New Zealand. So that kind of kept the league stage alive, and right down to the final game with Australia losing to South Africa, which obviously, as we've discussed, has had a big knock-on effect. So, Liam, where do you rate England now? Do you think after those last two must-win games, they are going to be battle-hardened and ready for this semi-final?
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what I'd go with. They are the most battle-hardened of these four sides left in the competition. I mean, Jason Roy, as we said, coming back into that top order has just given that sort of explosive edge which they lacked in the defeats they've had in this tournament, and they go into the semi-finals having essentially already played two knockout fixtures. I think they're the only concern I have about them is there is still obviously that reliance on winning the toss and batting first, and when the real uphill battle will be if they need to chase against Australia or India if they make the final, presuming obviously we expect India to be there. I do think that the draw has unfolded quite kindly to England. I mean, you'd rather be playing Australia at Edgbaston and India at Lords. We saw how Australia's sort of seam-heavy attack undid England at the home of cricket earlier in the tournament. So yeah. I think
beat New Zealand there comprehensively
exactly
as well.
Yeah. So I think in terms of where they're playing these teams, I think it's certainly fallen in England's favour. And I think if you're looking at the prices, I mean, I was with England from the start of the tournament, and I'd still very much be going with them. I mean, as we say, they go into the semi-finals, the most battle-hardened of the four sides. Had to beat two of the best sides in one-day international cricket to make the semi-finals in the end. Jason Roy back in the fold, draws panned out perfectly for them. And I think if you look at New Zealand, I mean, they're so over-reliant on key individuals, most notably Kane Williamson. Australia's balance now could be not obviously having that defeat to South Africa, but then also I think that the balance of that team could have been affected by Khawaja and Stoinis slightly coming out of that team. And I could quite easily see an England-India final at Lords as really what we all expected at the start of the tournament. And I think if I would edge towards England at the prices, also given the fact they've beaten India already in this tournament.
Yeah, it'll be a fantastic occasion, but the Antipodeans will have something to say about that before England-India think about the final. Joe, just looking back at some of the teams who've been eliminated, any teams or players who really caught your eye in the league stage of the tournament?
Yeah, a few really. We've got to talk about Shakib Al Hassan, haven't we? I mean, there's a case for saying he should be player of the tournament, playing in an average Bangladesh side who weren't good enough to reach the last four, but He himself scored 606 runs at an average of 86, and he took 11 wickets as well.
Phenomenal.
He was fantastic to watch. A couple of centuries, 550s as well. Shout out to a couple of the Pakistan bowlers as well, Shaheen Afridi and Mohammad Amir as well, who are both really good. As far as England are concerned, I think they're probably the team to beat. But what happens when Plan A goes wrong and the top two don't fire, and then suddenly, particularly if they're chasing something, we've seen them wilt in chases before quite a lot recently, and that's my biggest concern for them. I'd much rather back India chasing down a total than England at the moment.
And in both of those crucial games at the end of the league stage, England did bat first and made it count. I was really taken by Pakistan, actually, the way they finished the tournament. They started out with that horrific defeat to the West Indies, got bowled out for 105, and then after that they won 5 out of 7 completed games, had a washout against Sri Lanka, which they would have been favourites for, and ended up level on points with New Zealand, who I think ran out of steam so much at the end of the group stage. I think Pakistan were really impressive, and some of their young players as well. The future looks bright for them. Joe's mentioned Shaheen Afridi, who's 19, looks about 35, but Imam ul Haq's 23, Babar Azam, who we've all been raving about throughout these shows, is 24, and I think Pakistan got the makings of a really good side though. Liam, any other players or teams who've been knocked out that caught your eye?
Well, firstly, as you said about Pakistan, I think one thing to note as well is if it had been, say, head-to-head as a decisive factor as opposed to net run rate, then we'd be seeing them in the last 4. So, and personally, I think maybe that would have been a better indicator to sort of determine that the difference between the two teams. But as it is, New Zealand will be there. I suppose every team in glimpses showed promise. I mean, South Africa were pretty abysmal towards the start of the tournament, but I mean, even towards the end, we saw improvements from them. Obviously, with that victory over Australia at the end, and Hashim Amla started to finally kind of get a bit of a move on towards the end of the tournament. But as I said, I'd say out of them, Pakistan and Bangladesh were my 2 teams outside of that top 4 who impressed me the most. Yeah,
one other guy I'd like to highlight as well was Nicholas Pooran, who top scored for the West Indies. He was a 14-1 chance with some bookmakers at the start, and I don't think you're going to see him going off at that kind of price in future tournaments. He's only 23. Shimron Hetmyer, I know Dave's a big fan, is 22. So there've been some really eye-catching performances from some of the young players. Yeah,
I took a bit of a punt on West Indies and Pakistan in the outright at the start. West Indies, of course, they have disappointed. Pakistan, I think, will come out of this as the unlucky side, because I know it's a league stage. You'd say the best sides actually have finished in the top 4, but I'm just not sure they have, because I think Pakistan have overall been a better side than New Zealand. The rain-affected matches turned out to be crucial. Yeah. Look, is there a fairer way of doing it? I don't know. Better minds than me will discuss it. But I do agree with you, James. The future is very bright for this Pakistan side. And in Babar Azam, it's one of the most talented young batsmen around. And if they continue to improve as a unit, then you can never write them off anyway. And in the next 4, 5, 6 years, they're going to be a real force to watch. Yeah, and you mentioned those washouts. I mean, New Zealand rained off against India. That was a really crucial point for them, and the way New Zealand performed against the other big sides, lost to England and Australia pretty comprehensively, and that is obviously why they're still the price they are, even though they've
significant at the time as well, didn't it? I think.
Yeah, they'd won. They'd won the games that you were expecting them to win, and then that did seem like a little bonus for them the way India have been playing. And just looking at the top tournament run scorer market, I mean, we're going to discuss this when we come on to the India-New Zealand game, I'm sure, but opening partnerships have just been so crucial in this tournament. You look at Finch and Warner for Australia, Roy and Bairstow, obviously Roy's injury really seemed to derail England, and then Rohit Sharma for India, who's got 5 centuries in 8 innings. He's top of the run scoring list from David Warner. Dave, you've got prices for that. I mean, look, first of all, credit to Rohit Sharma. He's outscoring Virat Kohli, arguably the best batsman in the world. So it tells you what a great tournament he's had. He's on 647. He's 6-4 on to be top run scorer. Sorry, and that's because we expect him to have a semi-final, and we do expect him to have a final as well. We expect them to beat New Zealand. David Warner, 638 runs, 11-8. Looks a 2-horse race. 22-1 Joe Root, 28-1 Aaron Finch. But they're well over 100 runs behind. So it's going to take a monumental effort. So between Sharma and Warner,
And as I say, you've just got to give credit to Rohit Sharma because you're outscoring Virat Kohli. It just shows how well you've done.
Yeah, absolutely. I think looking at the top run scorer prices for the semi-final, I think they're now joint favourites. Which, I mean, Virat Kohli is throughout his career has just been kind of inked in as a short price favourite. So that goes to show what a special tournament Sharma's having. Actually, I'm quite tempted by that 4-6. To be honest, as you mentioned, he's certainly got the easier semi-final.
Yeah.
Admittedly, New Zealand's new ball bowlers are a threat. But yeah, you can see Sharma cashing in again in probably two more games. Top wicket taker. I'm not going to ask you lads for tips on this one. I think Mitchell Starc is 1 to 100. Is that right, Dave?
Yeah. Look, he's what is he? He's 6 ahead of someone who's no longer in the tournament. He's about 9 ahead, I think, of those that are still in. So yeah, look, this is done and dusted. I suppose the most interesting about Mitchell Starc is, of course, his mind games with Owen Morgan. He's saying that Morgan's scared of me, and that's already continuing from the last game. So he's going to have a huge part to play, obviously. But in terms of top wicket taker, he's done and dusted. Yeah, and he was player of the tournament at the last World Cup. He'd not played a huge amount of one-day cricket actually in the last couple of years, but there's a great training performance from Australia. They've got him spot on for this tournament. I think what's been quite actually refreshing and perhaps surprising about this World Cup, we expected the batsmen to just dominate. We were talking, will there be a 500 scored? We haven't come close to that.
Yeah, not even bowlers, 400, I don't think.
The bowlers, both seam bowlers and spinners, have really held their own here. Yeah, we've seen great batting from the likes of Sharma and Warner, but the bowlers really just they've not played second fiddle throughout this.
Yeah, and it's made for more entertaining games like that. I mean, the England-Pakistan series before this tournament was, it was good fun to watch the sixes and whatever, but it seemed to be 350, played 350 every single game, and by the fourth game of that, you are kind of hoping
balance has swung too far in the batsman's favour, whereas here it hasn't.
Yeah, and you look at some of the star performers, obviously Stark, but also Bumrah, Jofra Archer playing, he played kind of 3 ODIs before this tournament, and he just looks absolutely to the manner born. And so it has been really good to see the bowlers fighting back a little bit. So we're going to take a short break, and then we will come back with our in-depth preview of India against New Zealand, Tuesday's first semi-final.
Don't bet silly, bet savvy. Join Coral's Bet and Get Club and get a free £5 bet every Sunday. The smart money's on Coral.
Hello, welcome back to the Racing Post Cricket World Cup show. I'm James Milton with my Racing Post colleagues Joe Champion and Liam Flynn, and Coral's Dave Stevens, and we're looking ahead to the first semi-final. India, trophy favourites now, taking on New Zealand, the outsiders to lift the World Cup at Old Trafford. And Dave, India, pretty solid favourites for this one.
Yeah, they'd have been delighted to see South Africa beat Australia. That secured top spot for the Indians, and they go into this now 3-1 on favourites to win up at Old Trafford. 5-2 New Zealand. I suppose the one thing you say about New Zealand, a bit like a football team, they got the points on the board early, the games they're expected to win. The tournament since has really kind of petered out. And I personally, I'm in total agreement with these odds. I just do not see how this New Zealand team is going to turn it around against such a strong India side.
Yeah, I mean, India haven't really done too much wrong in this tournament. Obviously lost to England, but Liam, the way New Zealand finished that league stage, they really did kind of crawl over the line under pressure from Pakistan. And my concern with them is the way that they, against the better sides, they were heavily beaten by England and by Australia.
No, absolutely, and I think I'm in complete agreement. I think the prices are about right. I mean, not only did they have those defeats to Pakistan, Australia and England, but even the games they had won before those, they were very marginal defeats. I mean, we know about Brathwaite's innings for the West Indies. I mean, that was a very close one. We had that Trent Bolt catch, obviously, on the boundary. So I think, I just can't see any way how New Zealand can beat India in this match. I mean, their lack of a top order is, it's going to come unstuck against a team like India with the variation of bowling attack they have. Obviously, like Bumrah opening, and whether Shami or Kumar opens alongside him, and then you have Chahal, who's just been probably the best spinner in this tournament for me. And then Bumrah's death bowling has been absolutely terrific. So I cannot see how I think New Zealand could struggle if they do lose an early wicket to build partnerships with the likes of Taylor and Williamson, as they have been doing. And obviously, India can take some confidence from the fact they walloped New Zealand in their ODI series earlier in this year. So I can see no way of New Zealand winning this one.
Yeah, India won that series in New Zealand 4-1, I think. Although I think the one New Zealand win, they bowled out India for about 90, which not many teams have done. So they'll hope for a repeat of that. But Joe, where do you see the value in this one?
Yeah, I agree with what the lads are saying. Really, with regards to the match prices, I find it very difficult to see past India. I'm on New Zealand outright, but I'm not holding out much hope really, because I just don't think they've played very well in the second half of the tournament. Yeah. We mentioned that series earlier in the year. India really comfortable winners, and New Zealand scored 157, 234, 243 and 217 in losing causes. If they score that again, then India are going to knock off those runs easily in a chase, and form very much favouring India. And I think, I've not seen anything to convince me that India aren't going to win this game quite comfortably, really. They're the only team to play twice at Old Trafford in this World Cup, and they won easily, beat Pakistan by 89 and West Indies by 125. So, yeah, everything in favour of India, I think. Yeah, and just talking about the New Zealand batting lineup, which is facing this terrific Indian bowling unit. Kane Williamson held things together, particularly at the start when they were winning games. He's got 481 runs. I don't think any other New Zealanders got within kind of 200 of that. So that's been the problem. They've been losing so many early wickets. We've mentioned Jasprit Bumrah throughout this tournament. 5-2 for him to take 3 or more wickets. He just seems to be a threat whenever he's introduced, and Virat Kohli knows that. And whenever India need a wicket, they bring Bumrah on, and more often than not, he delivers. So he's a huge threat with the new ball. And they brought him on when they were in a little bit of trouble against Afghanistan. Brought him on in the middle overs, and he just took 2 wickets in 3 balls. And then his death bowling is absolutely phenomenal. So I like the look of that price. And the other one that interested me was Tom Latham at 10-1 to top score if as we expect, New Zealand are going to lose early wickets. Latham's batting at number 5. He's not really done anything in the tournament until that England game when he did top score with 57. Next best was 28. I just think on value terms that could be worth a small punt. But Liam, what would your bets be in this one?
Looking at India's bowling, as I mentioned, I think depending on whether or not he comes in, Shami being India's top wicket taker, there's been calls for him to start the semi-final now since Sachin Tendulkar's come out and said that he would like him to be starting in that semi-final. He took 14 wickets across the 4 matches in which he was involved, and he was in, as I mentioned, that series they played earlier in the year. He was in devastating form in those games. He was actually named player of the series. So if he comes in, then I think that he looks overpriced to be their top wicket taker. Also, another India bowler, I think Hardik Pandya, to take 2 or more wickets, about 2-1. I think he's often deployed. He's been deployed as a first change bowler a few times in this tournament, but of course that'll depend on the circumstances of the match. But I think he looks pretty overpriced to claim a couple of scalps. Figures of 3 for 60 against Bangladesh recently, and 2 for 44 off 8 overs at this venue at Old Trafford against Pakistan. So I think that's another one to keep an eye on.
There you go, me and Liam talking up pretty much the entire Indian bowling attack. So hopefully not a 10-wicket win for New Zealand to cover us. But Joe, any specials that came by?
Yeah, Mohammed Shami as well, as Liam said.
He's incredibly prolific when given a chance.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like he's bowled quite well in England before, and he's got comfortably the lowest average of any bowler who's taken sort of more than 5 wickets in this tournament. So yeah, he was a big shout for me. I think at 130, if he is in the size, then he's a big player. We've mentioned New Zealand's brittle top order, and I just think 9-4 Kane Williamson top run scorer for the Black Caps is such a solid bet. I mean, he scored 148 here against the Windies, and that was after Martin Guptill and Colin Munro were removed for first ball ducks. So, I mean, that's an incredible innings under the circumstances. He's just such a good player, and he was one of the better players in a disappointing New Zealand series in January against India. So, yeah, Kane Williamson definitely one for me, and as Liam said, Shami also a big price.
Yeah, I think Williamson's reached 40 in all but one of his innings, and that one was that kind of freak dismissal of Mark Wood's fingertips against England. So he has been superbly consistent. Dave, as a punter rather than a bookmaker, what price floats your boat here?
Yeah, I mean, if we look at the New Zealand batting, as Joe says, I mean, Kane Williamson dominates top run score for them at 9-4, just because the likes of Martin Guptill, Ross Taylor, Henry Nichols, they just haven't contributed enough, and that's reflected obviously in the match betting. I mean, Trent Boult is still a top class bowler. He could turn it on, 11-4 top New Zealand wicket taker. But for me, it's I'm just this India team has no weaknesses. Their batting is superb. They've got the choice of bowlers in Bumrah. I think they've got for me, the pick of the bowlers in this tournament. They got a great spinner in Chahal. There are just no weaknesses. And I go back to Bumrah again. A lot would depend on how the match pans out, because India might just win this comfortably. But his bowling at the death has just been so good. And if he is called upon, I think the 12-1 for him to be man of the match. That sort of took my eye. But the India top run scorer batting is fascinating, because Virat Kohli, as I say, I'm a huge fan of, 9-4, but Rohit Sharma 9-4 as well. So again, just reiterating what a great tournament. And I would probably, just because he opens, he gets first dibs, Rohit Sharma of the two would probably be my pick.
Yeah, I mean, Kohli, I think he may have only top scored in kind of one or two of their games, just because the openers have been doing so well. Rahul got a century as well last time out, and Shikhar Dhawan before his injury got a century. So
it's that strength in depth.
Yeah,
compare that to the New Zealand top order.
Yeah,
who's contributing the runs. That's why New Zealand have struggled over the line.
Yeah, if you want to support Kohli, it might just be worth kind of going over his runs line. He is like Williamson. He's just so consistent, churning out these 60s, 70s, 80s throughout the tournament. Right, guys, I'm going to ask for your best bet on India and New Zealand. Just got the one game to pick from, but let's have your gems here. Dave, I'll start with you.
For all my love of India and the fact I think they'll win India, I'm like Joe. I'm just attracted that Kane Williamson 9-4. He's been the only New Zealand batsman that's looked comfortable throughout.
Yeah, Liam.
I like the look of an enhanced wing cast of Sharma top India run scorer and India to win at 7-2. I just think it's obviously always a cardinal sin to avoid the obvious, and Sharma's just been in a different league really compared to the batsmen in this tournament.
Yeah,
so I think that's a good price.
Sounds good to me, Joe.
Once again, not going to avoid the obvious. India to have the highest opening partnership after 50 overs, or highest runs. To score the most runs after 15 overs, 8-11. We've talked about New Zealand's brittle top order. If they struggle again, then India could finish with way more runs than them.
Yeah, excellent. I will go for the 5-2 Jasprit Bumrah to take 3 or more wickets. We've been hailing him throughout this tournament. I think he could do some really real damage against this New Zealand side. Now, our next show is going to be on Wednesday, when we will be looking ahead to the second semi-final, England versus Australia at Edgbaston. It's going to be a cracker. Join us again then.
Don't bet silly, bet savvy. Join Coral's Bet and Get Club and get a free £5 bet every Sunday. The smart money's on Coral.